Hi, welcome back to Tania's Truth Talk on the Harpreet Singh Show. We were talking in the earlier segment with Glendene Grant, and Glendene, we were getting into the whole story about the police and how they were just totally not even listening to what you had to say. So what can you tell me about the pimp?
Well, I know that the police have known about him since the early 90s, that I have talked to police in Metro who have been wanting one of the girls that he is forcing into prostitution to turn against him, but nobody has had enough. They've all been too afraid. I mean, I'm not afraid. His name's Peter Todd, and he lives in Las Vegas, and he was born in London, England, and he's of Jamaican
descent. He lives in Las Vegas, but he came to Vancouver.
No, he didn't actually. Jesse was taken down there by a Canadian by the name of Donald Vaz, who she met in Alberta.
Okay.
Now, Donald Vaz is what I would consider a recruiter.
Yeah.
She was taken to Las Vegas and left with another Canadian, actually a guy from Surrey.
Okay.
And his Californian girlfriend.
Right.
And it was their friend who was Peter Todd.
Yeah,
so you see, right?
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that there are these pimps that are higher up, but they've got these recruiters that are going to the malls when the children are outside. If a child's at the mall and she's outside and she's having a cigarette and she should be in school, chances are she's got problems at home.
I also look at another thing that they do is
Facebook?
like airports, and bus depots, airports, where they see them getting off.
Yeah,
and they're looking around and there's nobody there for them because they might be a runaway.
Right.
Those are the prime targets.
And these guys are recruiting. They're just out there. They've got their feelers out there to bring them to these pimps.
One thing about Jesse's recruiter, he's a very attractive man. And the pimp is as homely as you can get.
Yes.
And I'm not a judgmental person. I don't care what a person looks like, but I look at it this way. The more good-looking guy is going to draw the young, beautiful girls in. Yes. You put this ugly, homely, middle-aged pimp out there, and they're all going to run in the other direction.
Yes.
You get the young, tall, good-looking black guy who's got money and dresses very nice and in style, not like we were saying pimps are thought of, but in name-brand clothing and like expensive stuff, like the things that these kids know.
Well, yes,
and then they bring
pimps
them
are not
to
just always black guys, but
no, they're
pimps
not.
are white guys too. They're all different nationalities. They come in all shapes, sizes.
It just so happened that Jesse's were both black men. It doesn't mean anything.
But it's nothing against
Jess. Not at all. Jesse's always dated black men since she moved to Calgary. It was not even a surprise to us.
Yeah, that is just, it's so true to say that because, a younger girl I was just working with recently, she's 12 years old, and she was recruited through Facebook because a friend of a friend poked her on Facebook, and then they eventually started chatting. And he invited her to parties, and he had a lot of money, and he was saying that he's got, does stocks and bonds and day trading and all this kind of stuff. And eventually she got lured into it too. And they don't just come out and say, hey, I'm a pimp and I've got big chains. These people are dressing like white collar people that are actually, there's recruiters in the colleges.
You're right.
There are traffickers that are hanging out at the colleges.
For example,
recruiting girls.
Ontario just had those young 14 and 15-year-old girls all arrested for human trafficking.
Where do you think that faith ties into this? Like with me, I know I'm a former pimp, technically. I was living off the avails of prostitution because I ran several brothels, and I exploited women. At that time, I had no faith. I honestly had no faith in God. I couldn't have. And
I actually think that some of the young ones that are convinced to recruit might not be as convinced as we think. They might be just as beaten to recruit as the girls are.
Well, that's the thing, although I was a perpetrator, I had somebody above me that was involved in organized crime. I was the madam, I was the pimp, and I was exploiting women, but I too was being exploited.
Exactly.
And what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of women that become madams, they have been exploited. That's how they've learned how this whole game works, where they end up running their own brothels. But there are criminal organizations that are still behind them.
And that's true. They don't know what to do, how to get out of it, so they just keep going. But a lot of them are
that's interesting that you say that, because this is where my faith in the Lord Jesus Christ had tied in, because I didn't want to give up the money. You know, it was hard to give up the money. Well, what am I going to do if I walk away from this? How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to do this? And it was when I turned to the Lord Jesus that when you have faith in Jesus Christ, it gives you a supernatural strength that you walk in blind faith. Yeah. I didn't know how I was going to make it on my own. I was a madam and I was really good at what I did. Now I got to make it in the real world. Yeah. And you know, when I left, I was living, eventually, I ran out of money. I was living in my car when I was writing my book. I was living in my car, and I could have went back to being a madam, but it was my faith in Jesus Christ. I said, you know what? God is going to carry me through this, just like he's going to carry you through this, right?
Like he is carrying me
He's carrying you through this, right? And you're walking blindly in faith, knowing that Jesus Christ has you under his wing and so protected, because you know what? We can't do this on our own.
No. It was when there was one set of footsteps was when he was carrying us.
I love that poem, and he is carrying you.
I do believe that. I believe it with all my heart, because no one in their right mind would even attempt to survive what I'm going through. And then on top of living with a missing daughter for 6.5 years, I go out there all the time, and I rip open my heart and I pour it out to people like you or the schools. Events where people want to learn about human trafficking.
You know, I can empathize with Jesse, because I was being bought and sold and raped every day. And in my opinion, prostitution is paid rape. And when I was prostituted, I remember just lying on my back, and I would go into the subliminal world, and I was dead. I turned into a robot. That was the only way that I could cope with what I was going through, knowing that several men were purchasing me and raping me all day long, you know. And then these men, as a former madam, I know that these men come in with their wedding rings on, police officers, politicians, Supreme Court judges, pastors, you know, and these are married men that say they're happily married, and they're coming and they're purchasing these women, somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's mother, and then they're going home and they're kissing their wives, their babies, with the same hands that they bought some young girl's flesh. It is just, it's disturbing, you know.
Somehow they have it in their mind that it's okay, they want it. But every girl that I've talked to, every woman I've talked to who has escaped the sex trade has told me that they go into another space. They go into another thing.
That was the only way that I could deal with it.
That's the only way any of them can.
How could you not? I had to completely block out. I could have became an Academy Award winner for Best Actress, because it was my money and my repeat clientele that brought them back. So I had to act. And you know what? I tell these men now when I do these speeches, they don't like you. They only like your money, or they're being pimped. They don't like you. That is an act. If they were pretending how they really felt about you, you wouldn't want to come and see them if they told you what they really thought.
The pimp would beat them if they
would get beat. That's so true, you know. And these men, I remember when girls would be in my brothel and the doorbell would ring and a John would come upstairs and all the girls would line up. And, am I going to have the redhead? Or am I going to have the brunette, or the Jamaican girl, or the Asian girl, or the Punjabi girl? Which flavor am I going to have today? Can you please turn around so I can take a look? Like their meat. Just like you would walk into a butcher shop and go, am I going to have the top sirloin steak or the filet mignon? What am I going to have today? And these men are just hobbyists at what they're doing. And many of them, the majority of them, I say this from personal experience, have wedding rings on their finger.
And you know what? They're the first ones to stand up and say how it's all wrong.
This
and
is
yet
where
they're
we
the
have
first ones to line up.
We have to raise the awareness and cut it off at the demand.
Stop the demand.
Stop the demand. You stop the supply. We need to go after the traffickers, the recruiters, and the Johns. Yeah. Because if they're not wanting to buy it because they're fearing the law, there's going to be no girls being able to work because there's going to be no demand.
They need to have their faces and their names and their occupations plastered up.
What was the name of that, the pimp that recruited Jesse again?
Well, Donald Vaz recruited her, and the pimp in Las Vegas is Peter Todd.
And he's still around?
And he's still around. He is still around. But I do know that having his name out there and his picture has made a dent. I have gotten phone calls from his estranged wife's family saying he did that to her. I've got phone calls from people saying, They've heard that Peter Todd has turned to selling marijuana because he's having trouble finding girls because
of this.
People are telling new girls about him
Yes.
and about Jesse. I have phone calls from women all the time who say that they knew Jesse in Las Vegas, either went back or just decided to look up some of these girls, and
Yes.
some of them are finding out Jesse's missing.
Yes.
And they're calling me with information about these people.
You are such an inspiration to me, Glendene. You truly are. I have never met a woman in my life that has so much tenacity and fight in her as you do, and I completely commend you, and I look up to you as a role model. You are just an example of a woman of honor, a woman of strength and dignity, who will never stop fighting for what you believe in, you know. And it just goes to show that it doesn't matter how much pain you've been through in your life, how much suffering you've gone, how many lemons that this world has dealt you, that when you turn to Jesus, he can take all that pain and turn it around for his glory. He can take those lemons and turn it into tasty lemonade.
Can I tell you something?
You know?
In 2010,
Yes.
the Salvation Army made me Hope Giver,
Yes.
which is somebody who was once without hope now gives hope to others.
You do.
And you know, it's my pleasure to do that, because from that I can carry on. I get strength from what I do, from you, from supporters. I mean, you know, and of course, you know, if I didn't have Jesus in my heart and right there with me, all the support in the world from people wouldn't amount to anything.
That's right.
But I need that too. I need all the other people out there. I need everybody loving Jessie and wanting her to be found, because it definitely, you know, makes me want to never stop. I didn't have her so somebody could take her from me.
Right.
See, I have Jessie's story is even different than others, because I actually flushed my pill with her and had her sneakily. Not that her dad didn't know that now, but it was a tough call.
But you know, it just goes to show, like, even though it's unfortunate with everything that's happened with Jessie, that still the Lord has made something so beautiful come out of this, because you are making such a difference in raising awareness today. Thank you for coming on the show today, Glendene. Well, you've watched Tania's Truth Talk on the Harpreet Singh Show, and thank you for watching. And now that you've been educated some more on human trafficking, what you choose to do with it is completely up to you. But now don't ever say that you didn't know. Thank you.